Hi, I am El Ninja Cupcake.
And I am your mystery podcaster, back from a long hiatus. It's me, Haley.
And I am Acquisition Rhymes, or Air if you prefer. And this is Insight Check, where we plumb the depths of the dungeons of your bad decisions to retrieve the treasure of wisdom. And today we have a very special guest with us. I introduce one and all to Mr. Leapacheski, or Leap, if you prefer. Hello, Leap.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. This is my excitement is over 9,000. It has been for far too long. So
wow, you've turned it up even farther than 11.
Yeah, the power monitor on my head just exploded. Now we must battle.
Oh,
I turn into a monkey immediately.
Oh my gosh, I wasn't blonde enough. I'm not ready.
I wasn't blonde enough.
Oh, we've got another DBZ episode.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Actually, in our last D&D game, I did use polymorph to turn into a giant ape, and I think I made at least 3 different Ozaru jokes, so I'm sorry for everyone who plays in our game.
I missed that, so this is number 3.
So yes, Leap is here to talk to us a bit about running Dungeons and Dragons for kids, as he is an awesome teacher and runs, I guess, like a D&D club, kind of?
Yeah, so it, long story short is my job in the school takes me into a bunch of different classrooms, and I was hearing some kids talk about Netflix and Stranger Things, I think, has really brought Dungeons and Dragons back into the periphery for kids who wouldn't necessarily see it. And so there was these kids talking about D&D. They asked me if I knew what it was, and which just opened up a whole can of worms.
Why, yes, my child.
Yes.
Let me teach you.
Allow me to give you a Demogorgon. Yeah.
No, Demogorgon, stop
I wish
it.
I just had my dice just being roll for initiative right now, but
right
I didn't.
now.
That's awesome.
But a couple of them had, one of them for his birthday kind of got the Dungeons and Dragons starter set, and he had tried to run his friends through a little bit and was mucking around with it. And I mentioned one day that if they were interested in playing a game at school, I could just probably run one for them to see what they thought. And then this thing has it's blown up into a whole club, and what was supposed to just kind of be one small party of what I thought would be 4 kids has turned into 3 separate games that happen almost every recess break. And it's been really, really cool. It's a ton of fun in a way I never expected.
Do they all take place in the same universe, or are they separate games?
Yeah, actually. So I've been really lucky. I've been playing in a similar place with my friends on and off for a really long time. Up until recently, and we've moved kind of back into the official Dungeons and Dragons world setting. But for a bit, we had this homebrew world that we had created, and I had run a little mini campaign for my friends kind of in between. We had just finished, Out of the Darkness? That's one of the...
Out of the Abyss?
Out of the Abyss, yeah. Yeah, so we just finished Out of the Abyss, and one of us was going to start us into this big Eberron thing, but we had a few months of downtime, so I wanted to try and muck around in the world we built and have been playing in for a while. And so when that finished, I had all of these ideas and stuff that we didn't get to. So yeah, basically the kids are in this homebrew world that my friends and I created in this little kind of sea shanty port town, and they're all kind of playing in the same space concurrently in a sort of Marvel universe.
The D&D CU kind of idea.
Yeah. It's cool. It's the Perkins verse. At first it was going to be the same place, but none of them were going to be able to interact, but they're way too interested in what each other are doing. And so what's really cool is that it's grade 6, 7, and 8s that I'm playing with. So for people outside of school, that's kids from, at this point in the year, 12 to 14 years old. And so after recess, they'll all be lining up or coming in and being hey, what are you guys doing? What have you found? And so they've all been off in their own little places but they're getting to that point where their decisions are going to really start having an effect on the places around them. And I'm really interested on kind of letting them see how other people's games and choices will affect their space and vice versa. I just think that they'll find that really cool.
That is really neat.
Do they ever come back to you and like tell you that they discuss things or that they've like done things, or do they keep it mostly to games? Like after they've talked to each other, people who are in the different groups.
That's a good question. I see them talking about the quests that they've chosen. Well, basically to get them to figure out the game. Like what's interesting with this is that none of them, aside from maybe 2 kids, have played before. So it's really, at the first few sessions, we're really teaching the mechanics of the game as we were going. And I thought the easiest way to do that, once they had picked their characters and all of that kind of stuff, was to just kind of start with combat. So for the first 2 games, they just started in an inn, and all of a sudden an unholy fog blew in and skeletons just popped out of nowhere. And so it was them trying to like learn combat kind of on the fly to figure out what they needed to roll to hit and what their attacks were and what spells did. And so that was really cool. And so sometimes they'll come back and they'll be like, oh, like, are you guys still fighting? Like, where are you in the town? But like after that, they've all kind of gone into different places. So just by what they're interested in, they've picked different quests and they've picked different things to do, which has been really lucky for me, to be honest, I guess.
That is super rad, and kind of leads into some of our dungeon crawls for this week. If folks don't mind, I was really excited to start on Dungeon Crawl because I was also running a game this past weekend for some of the fine folks here. We switched over.
I wonder who that could be.
It's definitely Haley and Cupcake, at least for now. Who knows who else might be added?
Oh.
Leap, one day you and I will definitely play D&D or something, for sure.
Oh man, for sure.
If folks don't know, actually, Leap and I and a few other folks on the Tweets, or Embers included, who folks would know from this podcast, have been making raps about Acquisitions Incorporated and the C-Team with Ember's very talented brother, Casey Drones, who is making us all manner of really rad beats for us to spit that sweet, sweet flow over. God, I'm white. Anyway, so
And Canadian.
And
It's
Canadian,
okay.
Oh yeah, don't you know?
Yeah, so that's how kind of we met over the Twitter, but yes, we must get in and play a game at some point in future. The game, we switched over, we're having a little hiatus from our D&D campaign right now, after kind of finishing up an arc of that campaign, and we switched over to Dungeon World, and I ran the first game for Cupcake, Haley, Jerica, and our friend Recca Flair, and they were the small squad. I think we had 2 halflings, a goblin, and a salamander, and it was wild and crazy and super fun, and I was super jonesed and psyched after it to just like continue running this game forever, because you all were just super creative and fucking hilarious. I
It was
think
good times.
you brought that lizard flavor expertly, deftly, Cupcake.
So how does that game work exactly? Like if it's not Dungeons and Dragons, how does it play out?
So it's essentially, so it is also like a high fantasy, dungeon crawly, fight monsters kind of thing, but the mechanics are you do not need a d20. You always roll 2d6 and add your appropriate modifier when something in the story necessitates it. So it has rules around like attacking in melee, shooting weapons at range, trying to convince someone to do something. So it's always 2d6 plus your modifier, and if you roll 10 or better, you get what you want without any issue. If you roll between a 7 or 9, you get what you want, but there's some sort of cost associated with it or some sort of consequence. And on a 6-, things go ass backwards and bad things happen. And that's pretty much the entirety of the system. So yeah, it kind of snowballs on itself. So they had to fight just a couple troglodytes, or just an adventuring band that's working out of a small town. They had snuck up on them. Everything was going hunky-dory. The thief climbed a tree to try to survey the scene and failed on their kind of check to scurry up to the top of the tree. The branch broke and they went tumbling ass over tea kettle onto the ground right beside the troglodyte, and we had a big epic fight. Haley's mage broke their broom. Cupcake salamander proved to be a somewhat disconcerting pyromaniac. A lot of fun things happened.
I may or may not have set a team member on fire.
I don't know if we need the not part.
So my question is like, how intentional was the setting on fire?
It was a
Like from the range of like intentional to like super intentional. Because I feel like that's the range here.
I think I've just become this really terrible salty person that everyone thinks I am.
No.
It was an intimidation check, and I was trying to help them like be intimidating, and she was like this really cool dingo type character, and I was like, well, I'm gonna put up this firewall behind her that makes her look like a Ninetales. And I rolled, and I think did I roll a 6 or did I roll a 3?
Think you rolled I think that one was the 6, but yeah, it was definitely on the low end.
It was down there. So then it actually just, instead of being big and intimidating behind her, caught her on fire.
The thing is, it did work though. Like, even though you lit her on fire, she was very intimidating in that she looked more angry. Her tail was on fire, which was the effect you were going for. She did scare a troglodyte away. Just she also took a few points of damage in doing that.
The upside to this game that I'm a big fan of, since I don't roll well, every time you roll terribly like that, you get a point of experience that helps you level up. So there are pros to being terrible.
It takes the idea of you learn best from your mistakes to a whole new level, because the only way to level up is by fucking up.
That's incredible.
It's a really fun system. It's super simple and straightforward. Actually, it's one of the things I recommend if you're trying to get like kids into D&D and you don't want them to be too bogged down with rules. It's a really rules-like kind of low number system that's great for like anyone's first D&D thing. Or if you're just more narrative than maybe crunch or numbers focused, it's a great system to play with. So yes, I was super psyched after that, and I think we're going to be working our RDM Jay into the fold as a player next week.
Yeah, I think Haley actually referred to it as D&D Light.
Yeah.
Math Light. I liked the Math Light version of D&D. I don't like to add.
This is one of the reasons I love Roll20.
Yeah, exactly. But we rolled actual dice, which has always, with the big numbers in D&D, stressed me out a little bit. But this was like, oh, I can add 6 up to 6 twice, and that's easy. I can do this. But I liked it. I liked not having to like worry about all the ins and outs of so many spells. And I also liked that everybody had kind of like common moves and things they could do. So like, even though I was playing a wizard, I could still like hit things and be somewhat effective.
Yeah, you turned invisible and then you went out and you bopped a troglodyte over the head twice with your broom, and it was great.
It's true. And then my broom broke, and now my character, she's very sad. Pose is very sad, and all she wants is her broom to be fixed.
We will make sure that happens. For me, I really like it because I think it's a system that begs to be kind of hacked and played around with. I think for maybe new time players that can be somewhat intimidating, because most of the time you want to know the dimensions of the sandbox before you start playing in it. So like I know Haley's playing a goblin, which isn't one of the stock kind of classes, but we played around with like, what would that mean? What kind of special things does that get you? But for a player like me, who is Mr. Min-Max, I want to do the most damage, I want to have the most options, I want to have the highest AC. A system like this kind of frees me up to not worry about any of that crap and just focus on making a cool character. And it's a relief for me, because otherwise I lose myself in, anydice.com trying to make the biggest hit possible.
I don't care about the math even in the D&D, so this system also appeals to me because I can do whatever I want with my characters without setting myself up as a disadvantage to Air and his damage-dealing monsters. Monsters being his character, being a monster.
I think I reined it in our campaign. I play more of a controller character, so he's not looking to, demolish all the things. He's mostly looking to, be a jackass and occasionally stun a few things.
Yeah, monster.
Well, right now he's a paperweight.
Yeah, pretty much.
Things went very stressful in our campaign.
It did. They ended. It was our empire, right? It was our Empire Strikes Back. Things ended a little dark, but we're going to pull it around. It's going to be okay.
If I make it out of the Underdark alive.
It's okay. I have come to seize control of someone else's body to try to convince you that you shouldn't kill me, and then maybe I'll help you. I don't know what's happening, Jay. Please don't let us all die.
Does anyone else have a dungeon crawl for this week?
So, yeah, Goblin name generator. When I was prepping for Dungeon World, our Dungeon World game, I was trying to come up with a fun, cute name for my little goblin. And I didn't know what kind of names were good names for goblins or what their names tended to sound like. And so I just Googled goblin names. And then I found this fantasy name generators, which actually in D&D Beyond, I'm pretty sure they're widget in the character builder where you can have it randomly choose names for you. I think this is where it pulls names from. I'll double check that. But you can go to the goblin name generator and then click get female names, and it'll just give you random female names, and then you can do male names. They have all sorts of things. They have animatronic names.
They have Kenku names.
They have Ifrit names. They have ogre names. They have unicorn names. I'm going to click on unicorn names right now. Hang on.
Goodness.
Gotta put this
some of that good
podcast
unicorn.
on hold. Let's see. Do we want male names, female names, or neutral names?
Are we gonna name your sword?
No, my unicorn. Maybe. I just our imaginary unicorn.
Or your pack of toy unicorns?
Yeah, let's name them. This one has Sable, Anisel, and Starburst. Perky the unicorn. Okay. Oh, that's good.
I want this job.
Someone's
Absolutely.
getting paid for this.
This website would be a great reference for a DM, because I'm also clicking around now that I'm not just looking at goblin names. They have a whole thing for generating place names, so island names, park names, pirate
Haley, send
names,
this to
tavern
me.
names.
I need this.
I'm going to share this. There's also human name generator, place names, so cliff and fjord names. The slippery
So this
crag.
will be something that we will share when we release the episode.
For sure. Yeah, this is pretty cool. I like that it does places as well as... Sorry, I was really distracted by the fact that there's DJ names, dinosaur names, disease names, drug names. All right.
Does it
There's
have
just a lot of names.
Dragon names? How to name your dragon?
Let's see. How to name your dragon. There are dragon names and dragon names with Chinese origin, and then dragonkin names, and also Drakene names. There's lots of dragon names. How to name your dragon, we got you covered.
Perfect. I mean, it's one-stop shopping for me. There's literally nothing else I need in this life than a panoply of dragon names.
Exactly. I can click this button that says get drug names. Juice.
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 Drug.
Boom. Oh, my favorite one so far, rock salt.
Rock salt.
Crocodile tears.
Those
Yeah.
kids hopped up on the rock salt and the crocodile tears.
Oh, no,
Just
say no,
eating
kids.
each other's skin.
Say no to crocodile tears. Don't do it. Don't do
Winners
the grave
don't use
dust
crocodile
either.
tears.
Grave
This
dust.
has suddenly become incredibly educational.
It has.
gone-
It has.
it's
We're an
gone
after-school
way-
special at this point.
Oh,
Yep.
no.
I feel like my players would hate me if, like, in the end, it was just a big lesson about saying no to drugs. Like, I won't
Yes.
do it to them, but I feel like that would be... I would just never have players anymore.
Oh, that would be
used to
so great, though.
Crocodile tears are a real bad rap. Anyway, edutainment.
Wait, idiom generator? Gosh, I need to get off this site or I'm never going to do anything.
This is
a
Haley's
deep
black
hole.
hole. This is...
Yes.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Totally
Wait,
zoned.
I have to do this one for Jerica. A library is meaningless without readers.
Oh.
Also,
Is that-
this one's probably Haley's favorite. Glue doesn't stick to everything.
That sounds
and-
like a statement that gets followed up with challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. Excuses make for bad friends. Okay, I'm closing the site now. All right.
Focus.
Check it out.
This is a good...
Yeah. Welcome back to the rails. We're Insight Check.
We are here.
Yeah.
My dungeon crawl has been... Well, it's been on pause because, like Air has said, a few of us have been very busy within the Twitter community creating some things that, to be honest, I am just so excited about. So
Yeah. I've listened to our song like a dozen times every day. It's really sad.
Oh my
I keep
goodness.
retweeting it.
I can't help it. Like, honestly, my car rides have become me just listening to my Twitter friends rap and practicing my future bits. Like this is the best version. I didn't even know 33 could look like this, but this is the best version I could ever hope for.
This is the best third life crisis I'm ever gonna have.
That's right, kids. If you are still young and not in your 30s, it gets this good.
It gets this good. You could be rapping about your favorite D&D stream on Twitter now.
I'm not in my 30s.
So Haley,
well,
get ready.
Nobody's perfect. Yeah.
I can see my future.
And it is a fantasy name generator.
It can generate names of pizzerias. I can just tell you more things that it can.
Are you still on the site?
So back to Rails. Before I turned a corner, I've been listening to Critical Role Season 2 over podcast. And it's my second stream for Dungeons and Dragons. The first stream that I consistently watched was the C-Team stream. And I've just been really enjoying just the differences that listening to a podcast is versus watching. Like, I do my best to watch the recordings of the streams for C-Team. And to be honest, they're just very, very different games. And so as a viewer, it's just been cool to kind of just see those differences and listen to them and see different stories and different worlds unfold, if that makes any sense.
I have also been watching, but not watching, listening to the Critical Role Season 2, and I actually don't watch even the C-Team live. I just, as you can tell, my attention span is not my strongest suit. So without the ability to pause and rewind, I struggle a lot. So I have been listening to basically just kind of got the habit, I would say, or got used to listening to everything in podcasts from like the original AI days. And I'm super happy that they've done Critical Role Season 2 like in podcast form from the beginning, because it's really a different style of game, and it's cool to be exposed to all sorts of different styles and like take the pieces that you like from each and bring them to your own game.
All I was going to say is, it is a testament to the fact that every table is very different, and Dungeons and Dragons there's no stock way. It's a game that there's no stock way to play. Like Jerry Holkins and Matthew Mercer are great dungeon masters in their own right, but they are very different dungeon masters. Like Matthew is very flowery, very descriptive, very open, and very concrete in his descriptions, whereas Jerry, sometimes I'll listen to the podcast twice because his descriptions of things are so esoteric, or the things he's describing are so alien, that it takes me a while to really kind of get my imagination set and fixed on what he's describing. But
totally.
In using very kind of open, almost conceptual language, it makes these places feel more alien and more strange, as opposed to Matt, who's a little bit more, I would say, kind of stock. You see torch sconces along the wall with engravings in stone, whereas Jerry sounds like he's reading Kant or something. It's like some philosophical treatise.
Oh yeah, totally. It's like, I think you said it, one of you guys said it in a previous podcast, that like Critical Role is like stock D&D. If you want to hear it at like some kind of premium, they're giving that kind of premium experience. And yeah, it's like what Jerry does is it's like some kind of conceptual fantasy, right? Like that you need to wrap your brain around what he's doing for the image to even just be exposed to you. But then when it drops, it's like really, really interesting to kind of see where he's going with it.
Yeah, I think Haley said it. Haley and I were talking, and she said that Critical Role is kind of what D&D has been, maybe traditionally done to and executed at a very high level. It's what D&D can be, and then the C-Team and AI is really what D&D will likely be when it's played out at your table, because it is so much a function of the people that are playing there. So someone like Jerry, who's super verbose and has this just wide-ranging lexicon, and I think he's even said he has synesthesia, so he like tastes words or feels words. You really get that in his descriptions. Like they're so amorphous and they're so just kind of out there, that it really lends this flavor to the game that is so different and so interesting.
For sure. I totally agree. What I've picked up from Matt Mercer that I've been trying to put in my games is I really like how he describes what a roll looks like, even when it's not successful, right? Like that, it's not just that you miss, he describes why you miss, or like what happens
to you, yeah.
When you block, like you almost hit, but they block it, or like it grazes off of the armor, or you stumble in your footing. And just like for, at least like back to for my kids, for the students, it's like we don't have a lot of stuff, like we don't have minis, we don't have a lot of like things, so trying to create that world with more detail, I think adds to the story for them too, right? So I'm glad I was exposed to it.
And Haley, I think you said that too, right? Like you said in a previous podcast, you really like that Matt, even when they fail forward. They never they don't fall down a pit and die. It's now you're gripping onto the edge and can someone help you up, and something like that.
Yeah, I just like that everything has consequences. It's not like, oh, you didn't do it, who else wants to try it? It's like, you tried it and it didn't work, or now you have to recover from how badly you tried to do it. So it just makes it more believable to me. Like, if you really mess something up, like, something bad's going to happen. But he does always give the, like, chance for others to, like, try to save you from whatever's happening. So, yeah, I like that aspect of it, and that it's not just like the numbers and, okay, you rolled a 5, so you didn't do it, now let's do the next thing. Or you rolled a 20 and you did it, good job. And like it's a lot less about the numbers and a lot more about like what the numbers make the story do. Yeah. And that's kind of what I mean, as I've said multiple times in this podcast, numbers are my thing. And so I need the words. I'm in D&D for the story and the interactive storytelling aspect of it.
Absolutely.
So
that was one of the things I think I've said about, like, the only thing about like D20 based systems that kind of makes me sad, and it's not all of them, but in 5e it is an example, is they are based on a binary. It's either you do it or you don't. So I think it kind of predicates a sense of, oh, okay, it didn't happen, let's move on. You know, you didn't succeed, too bad, so sad, let's move forward. And there is nothing narratively interesting to a miss. So that's why I like Dungeon World, because on a miss, you get experience points, so there's something fun for that character, an upswing for that character functionally. But there's also, like, in combat, I only get to have the bad guys attack and do damage on a miss. So always something interesting happens on a low roll. There's never a time when a roll is like, well, didn't work, let's move forward. It always pushes the narrative forward. And you can do that with D&D as well. Obviously, Matt Mercer is a great example. It's just, it's really good to see an example of that first to know that, oh, right, I guess it would be interesting for a miss to actually push the narrative forward and just not be all right, who else wants to try sort of situation. The last thing I want to do before we leave this dungeon crawl, because Leap has been talking about running games for kids. Leap, I don't know if you've seen Ethan Schoonover, at Ethan Schoonover on the Twitter, but if you haven't, he is also a teacher, dungeon master, and he runs a game at his school. He's got an all-girls group, and it was so successful, they now have a period called D&D Studies, which is an elective at his school.
Yes, if you haven't seen Ethan's work or what the things that he's tweeting about, it's just really, really, really cool stuff. Seeing the engagement of his students, seeing the way that he's like connecting things within the game. What I really like about his tweets is he's really good at showing the kind of like, it's lame, but in education, we call them the like aha moments, like those realization moments that kids have when it's like, oh my goodness, our games are connected. Or like, oh, we just found out that the bad person that we have here is connected to what they're doing. And like, it's just rad. Like, it's cool to see what people are doing about it.
This is my favorite post that I have seen, which I just pulled up on his Twitter. It's an email from one of his
I was just about
students.
to read the exact same thing. Please go
Good.
ahead.
I'm glad. Dear Mr. E, I have the most amazing amazing backstory idea and the most beautiful cult mission, but in order to make it work, I need to ask you a favor. Can I make a cantrip that turns rocks into grilled cheese sandwiches as the magical welcome to people who join my cult? I will share my beliefs and backstory at club next Friday. Thanks ever so much, Nar the Devourer.
And the best part is she embedded, it's like a Google Hangout email, so she embedded a poll that's like, of course you can, sure thing, no sorry.
No sorry.
So she tried to stack the deck by having 2 yeses and a no as his potential
I was
options.
trying to figure out if those were like his phone's auto responses or if she had done it, and I love either thing.
Yeah.
Also, I like his response that says any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic that turns rocks into grilled cheese.
Jeez, yes. It's a very good corruption of the statement. Yeah. So
I
definitely
want
check
that
out.
in real life.
Who doesn't?
I know.
Man, that would make
Seriously.
my life so much easier because as soon as I get home, all I hear is more grilled cheese. So
Yeah, that's that dad life right there for sure.
hashtag dad life. Yeah, I have yet to be able to explain to my daughter that cooking takes time. Anyway,
The one thing I want to add to this whole D&D with kids thing, the number one thing, if you're thinking of starting a D&D game with your kids, the number one thing that I would recommend is something that you guys have said a lot, is like keep it as simple and as reactive as possible to what they're doing. And the thing that I really, really liked is that Wizards of the Coast has pre-made characters. And I know you guys have talked about this before, but like they have these folders that have a character from level 1 to 10. And one of the most fun parts at the beginning was just opening up a computer screen and just showing them the amazing pictures that go on and just kind of letting the kids pick and browse what they might want to do. And that saves a ton of work and just lets you roll, just lets you get started.
it's great. Yeah, the ones that came with the starter set are perfect for that, and they're freely available on the Wizards website. So if you're just looking for a 1st to 5th level character, one that you can easily level up to 5th, and you're not having to plug through options and whatnot, check them out. They're awesome. The other thing I wanted to mention in regards to that, the starter set being mentioned, at the college I work at, every so often I walk through the hallways and I saw a group of students playing the starter set, and my heart just grew 3 sizes and broke the, I assume, measuring device that was currently working on assessing my character as a human being. It's just awesome to see this uptick in tabletop RPGs and D&D in particular. You know, it's no longer secluded. These are kids out in a hallway just playing in the middle of between classes. I was like, hell yes.
Roll call!
Ba, ba, da, ba.
Wow.
It was
See, you know
great.
he's a fan because he knows our shtick.
Sorry, I've been listening all the time. So
Oh, thank you. Aww. Anyway, thank you so much. We appreciate your fandom. Please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes.
hey, yeah, for
Open
anyone
up-
who hasn't, go on to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. It's really
Right
cool.
now.
Right now.
Pause.
Love
Open
us.
up iTunes, leave the review, then come back. I'll wait.
We'll be here. It's cool.
Thank
Take
you
your
very
time.
much. Thank you very much. I appreciate your review.
Welcome to Roll Call. Today we're going to take on probably one of the most iconic races in all of D&D, Elves. We're
Talk
gonna
Elfie to me.
So yes, we're going to talk Elves. We have a few questions on deck, but before we get to that, we're going to turn to our esteemed panel here. Haley, you were playing an elf, and now you're actually playing an Eladrin, which is like a double elf with cheese.
It's true. Extra elf with elf on the side.
And Leap, I know you had said that you had played some elf goodness before, or in past. You had a long-running elf character.
Yeah. I've in our current campaign that we're playing right now, I'm playing an elf that started entirely because of Amy T. Falcone's Wood Elf Druid and just how cool it was. So I too made a Wood Elf Druid because I just wanted to be a spider and a bear and just all of those things. I was thinking about it after it was mentioned that we might do roll call, and I've played more elves than not, actually. So yeah, I'm really excited about this.
Well, you're definitely in good company, because also from the bad side of the tracks, we have El Ninja Cupcake, who plays
I play a really pretty drow.
a real pretty drow.
Yeah, she does have an alter ego that she falls back on a lot. She parades around as a high elf.
And we met that high elf first, actually, in a one-shot. Little did we know she was just the window dressing for this bad elf girl. But yeah, so we have 3 long-running elf players. My bard is a half-elf, so I've got a touch of that elfy goodness in there. So we've got a series of interesting questions. I'm going to kick us off with what I think might be the best question of all time on r/D&D, though it could have been on r they did the math. Speed of a wood elf monk compared to Usain Bolt.
Are you serious?
I am absolutely serious. They went ahead and did the math. We'll make sure to link this particular Reddit thread on the old Tweetsaur, but they went ahead and did the math, and they said a wood elf, level 20 wood elf monk, doing a step of the wind to dash as a bonus action and dashing as their normal action, would travel 195 feet in 6 seconds. So almost 200 feet in 6 seconds. They're moving 50 feet a second. And then they crunched all the numbers down. They're like, well, that's about 22.16 miles per hour. Usain Bolt's time is 27.8 miles per hour. So Usain Bolt is faster on foot than anyone in Faerun. Mic dropped. There you go.
No, I'm gonna contest this for just a second, because I think we have a certain bard in the party that likes to haste people.
He does. He's very hasty with the haste.
It's true. I guess if they had haste applied, maybe they could beat Usain Bolt.
They could be. It would be Usain.
What's the testing? There would have to be a detect magic wizard on hand, though, right? To make sure.
He's hasting. He's hasting, goddammit.
They basically need
The Russian.
Yeah, exactly. They need a committee.
I did actually. I remember I specifically got Phantom Steed, and then I was riding said steed with the bard, and then I had taken Rekka's druid with me, and she hasted it, and I was like, oh crap, it can move 600 feet around. So I ran us off, splitting us off from the party, and then they killed the horse, and we were stuck there fighting against an army while our friends ran to catch up. It was not the smartest decision on my part. We were talking about elves?
Well, so I think that in the Usain Bolt comparison, you do need to keep in mind too that for a prolonged distance that this monk would be able to continue to travel, Usain Bolt probably can't keep up that speed for any longer than the 100 meters. So I think that a wood elf would win.
Oh yeah, an incredible top-tier godlike fantasy person against the fastest real human in the world.
In the world, right. I mean, basically a godlike magical human.
That's true.
Of
yeah,
speed.
you know what? That's fair.
He's just the human of speed.
Usain Bolt, the human of speed.
the human god of speed? I don't know.
The human god of speed. I love this.
So Haley and El Ninja, why did you guys pick elves as your race? Like, out of any of the races that you could have picked, what brought you to the elves?
I will go for it. I have been reading fantasy novels for a very long time, and as long as I can remember, I have just felt like an affinity with elves in all books, mostly the Lord of the Rings books. I was a big Lord of the Rings elf fan, and I just spent a lot of time reading about elves. In high school, went through a brief period of being like, I will learn the elven language devised by J.R.R. Tolkien.
Amazing. That's why we receive.
Things that I don't know if I've ever said out loud before. But yeah, no, I've just always kind of identified with elves, and when I was like trying to pick a character that spoke to me, I was just like, there's literally not a conversation. Like, I just opened the book to elf and read elf, and then I picked a class. I didn't even read the other ones.
Yeah, I think that's very much the case. Elves are just these delicate, badass, beautiful creatures.
Basically everything that I would like to be IRL.
Yes, exactly. That is so much the point. I kind of settled on the drow when I had spun up this first character, which was a different version of the one I'm playing now, for what wound up being a one-shot. And just kind of reading a little bit about it, I don't know what I was thinking or if I was distracted, but for some reason it didn't dawn on me that drow were like terrible evil creatures. Because I guess they're not in all cases, but that's what's kind of interesting about them. I liked a little bit of their flavor, but I hate spiders, so
so you were never going to be the typical drow, the spider worshipping variety.
No, I am not. That is for sure.
We gotta save you from those spiders in game of the Underdark.
You're loath to worship spiders?
No,
there it is.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Go home. No, I loved it. It was great.
Cupcake, you were playing a drow because drows are awesome, and
Yeah.
you didn't realize that they're, sometimes bad. I mean, the thing is, the biggest examples we have of a drow is, a hard-bitten
Dritz.
anti-hero. Exactly. So it's, who would assume?
And I thought that was kind of cool. And I'm like, hey, well, if he's out there, they're anywhere. Like, regardless of whether one perceives an individual to be good or less than ideal, each one of those people, when you make, I don't want to say big decisions, but when you make big impacts, you're going to attract following and admiration from people.
For
Whether or not they voice it, that's, their own thing. So I'm sure Dritz has some people in the Underdark that are quiet but think he's pretty awesome.
Yeah, like for me, the cultural bit of like elves is just really, really interesting, right? Like in like that Tolkien-esque D&D kind of fantasy place, elves always come from somewhere else, right? Like whether it is those beautiful high elf cities or like the deep wooden enclaves, or from underground, like the drow. You have like this rich cultural story that if you really want to, you can kind of tap into or mess with, or like Drist and like what your character sounds like, El Ninja, kind of play counter to, right? And so even just reading like the descriptions in the PHB, the player's handbook of like what high elves like and what wood elves do, and what drow believe in, you have like this kind of rich starting point that you can make some really interesting character decisions, right? And so I like when you have humans as kind of the base model of society in this kind of space, like the question of like, okay, well, you're an elf, you've come from somewhere else that is probably like elves really like, so what made you leave? Like, why are you here? Right? And then all of a sudden I think that there's some really interesting story options that can come about from that.
This is the entirety of my character's backstory.
I feel like that's a lot of elf backstories though, right? Like that's my guy too. When I think of Tolkien, when you see an elven enclave, it's just beautiful, right? So it's like, why would you leave then, right? But there's some compelling reasons, obviously.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very interesting. I like just that whole thing. I feel like that seems like we all kind of have that aspect of the elf like story and like feeling surrounding elves like in common there. It's just like they have this quality to them that's cool and like isn't really meant for people to understand, but like it's cool to play into that for me.
So some of the other questions we've been looking at online on r/D&D, we have one from Pogo Porpoise that asks an interesting question, one that I've never thought about. So I'm DMing a game this last weekend and came upon a question in the session about elves. Can elves choose to actually sleep, such as taking a short nap, or are they actually incapable of sleeping? Rules as written say that elves don't need sleep. Instead, they meditate deeply, remaining semi-conscious for 4 hours a day. It also says that in the Fey Ancestry ability that magic cannot put them to sleep. It's a very trivial question. It's not for mechanics in the game, but just out of player curiosity. Can elves sleep if they wish to? I don't actually know if there's an answer to that. I would say I would definitely kind of leave that a question to the table if the player playing that elf had a compelling reason to want to sleep. But what do we think about elves and sleeping, elven experts?
I have never thought about it until this moment. Like you, Air, I kind of min-max a little bit, right? So I like the idea of just not having to take that 8 hours of rest, right? And the idea of meditating is cool, but there is something really funny about just elves having a racial insomnia, right? Like they just really want to sleep, but they can't. Like they lie down frustrated every night, and they're like, damn it, no, I'll just meditate.
Just more things I have in common with elves. But I actually need to sleep.
This would be a great idea for an elven revenant.
Oh, yeah.
They just want to
I can't sleep
so
in
badly.
2 ways. Yeah.
We'll just name him Unisom
Unisom the elf.
or Ambien.
No, the interesting thing about it is like that they can't even be put to sleep by magic. So like Ambien probably not going to work. Is Ambien magic?
Is Ambien impressive in Dungeons and
sleep
Dragons?
I would like to say yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it would be up to canon. I kind of have like this fantasy in my head of elves. I mean, they live a very long time, just slipping into a slumber to pass time.
Oh, cool. I like that
would be
very
cool.
much.
The world doesn't need me now. Kind of like going into the West or whatever, and then they can come back.
Yeah.
The whole Tolkien thing.
It must seem to like an elf as well, like if you're looking from a role-playing perspective, sleep must seem either so luxurious or so wasteful, right?
I know,
Like
I feel like it would depend on like what that character's mindset would be. I feel like if you played like an older elf, there might be this like desire to detach from the world and be able to sleep. But maybe like younger elves who are like, I have so much ahead of me and so much to do, like stop sleeping, people. It is really interesting. I did do some Googling, and I do have an answer from Mr. Jeremy Crawford.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
And he says, an elf can lie down and think, I'm going to sleep. And then that fey-descended deer then goes into a trance. So, do you count trancing as sleeping? And that would imply to me that they cannot actually sleep. They can only trance.
That's interesting.
Isn't there a type of sleep schedule that some people do that they only sleep like every 2 hours every...
My friends did this in college. It is called the Uberman sleep cycle. Or the thing that they did.
Anything named after a Nietzschean concept is bound to work out well. Please, go on.
You sleep for 20 minutes at a time, equidistantly throughout the day. And you, like, time it. You don't sleep for any longer than, like, real sleep mechanisms. Like, it's crazy. And they were like, you get so much done, but you also consume gigantic quantities of food. And you really need someone else to do it at the same time as you, because it's really hard to stay awake if there's not someone else awake with you in the middle of the night. And so they were roommates and they did this together, and I have like had sleep problems for my entire life. So it just consisted of a lot of like 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. walks around Boston for a while. And then eventually they went back to sleeping like normal people. But they did this for a couple months, or maybe it was like a month and a half. It was crazy. And they ate a lot. They were like, you're just hungry all the time. They were also college guys. So I mean, I feel like a large amount of being a college guy just involves being hungry all the time. Guys, question mark. Is this correct?
Yeah, no, that's a big part of the genre, I would say.
Of the genre.
Just hunger.
I've never known satiety my entire life.
You just literally
I'm eating right now.
Listen, let's not talk about food. I'm trying to eat better. And basically all that means is that I just want to eat all.
So that makes me wonder then, if elves are like that, do they eat more? Like, could this...
Oh, that's a good question.
Now I'm just going to picture that Fia just eats constantly. Like, she's just always eating.
This would be a good pretense for an elf character.
Oh, I like it.
Something character-wise I like as well is, like, what does someone think of, like, how does someone view the world knowing they are going to live 700 to 800 years? Right? Like, as long as something doesn't kill them first. Yeah. Right?
I have tried to wrap my head around that.
What's trivial? What's important? Right? Like, how do you view, what's the lens that you see being like,
right, and how do you...
You're gonna die in a 7th of my lifetime. Right?
Right.
Like,
Like, how do you get attached? How do you let yourself become, like, attached to anyone that's not an elf or doesn't have a long lifespan either? I actually think about that a lot with Fia. because Fia's my elf, because she is like all about making friends. But I decided that that's like, this is some insider knowledge, that I feel like she like decided that she wasn't going to like be like the rest of the adult elves who just like have pushed humans and others with shorter lifespans away. She's like, I'm not going to be like that, so I'm going to make friends with everybody. But I actually thought about that a lot. Like, why would she go and adventure and meet people who are only going to live for a fraction of her life? She's like 90 years old, so she's not old.
Oh, so
she hasn't even reached like a technical adulthood by elf
yeah,
standards,
she's
right on
the, she might be like 99. She's like right on the edge there of like just about to be a grown-up. So it's not like she's like, oh, I've had like 700 years and I'm gonna die anyway, so I'll meet these people. So I thought about this a lot, actually.
So something that's like a challenge for my character, his name is Lievra, and we had like my friends also just play on Roll20 but we're all originally from the same place, and so we had a weekend where we got together and played a game, and in the haziness of the weekend, myself and a human character put on these 2 cursed rings that basically, the good thing about them is that when one of us gets healed, both of us gets healed. The bad thing about them is if one of us dies, the other one dies.
Oh, no.
The other one gets 24d10 necrotic damage done to them.
That's like a
and
death palm from a monk or whatever.
Nobody let Jay listen to this.
Yeah.
And so at the time I was like, well, this will be like a cool like bonding thing for me and my, my buddy who's playing this great Han Solo character named Rey, this human smuggler rogue. But then on the drive home, I was like, he is only going to live until like 90, and I need to be the king of my kingdom. And like my entire character shifted, right? Like my new quest is like, how do I keep this man alive much, much longer than he has any right to be, right? Yeah. And that's what got me kind of thinking about like the longevity of an elf life. Before that, it was just kind of a cool idea, right?
Yeah, interesting.
I think that Loxley has just hit that point in her life. Like, she's been through some shit. And I had to check my character sheet because I couldn't remember how old she was. I guess she's like 104.
Oh, she's
and
also
she's just
baby.
Yeah, exactly. So she's kind of at that like teenage angst stuff, and with some of the stuff she's been through, she's very much reaching the I don't want to go through that again. Like, I don't want to feel that way. Why am I going to set myself up to feel this way?
Loxley's a centenarian, and Ordalf, the archfey, was like millennia old. So I've just learned that my bard is into older women. This is good to know. Useful information.
I am going to tell you what I told my husband. I may be a cougar, but I purr like a cub.
Good to know. We just need to play a druid and we can really deliver on that line.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, cupcake. So speaking of cats and elves, we have another question. This is probably the greatest segue I will ever do. Atrocious13 on r/D&D asks, I'm genuinely curious. I want to know, can a tabaxi and an elf have a child together? This strikes me as the kind of thing that should end with asking for a friend. But anyway, can a tabaxi and an elf have a kid together? And if they do they look like that lying cat from Watchmen?
Okay, my mind essentially went right to S.A. Wells fanfic.
I mean, my mind always does.
S.A. Wells, you kill me.
What do we think, people? Kitty elves? What do you think?
One of my challenges with D&D is that you have these half races, right? So there's gotta be more half races, right? Like there's gotta exist in some kind of a capacity, right? So I don't see why not. I don't see why an elf couldn't shapeshift into some kind of cat creature. Like, I don't know if that's the mechanism that they could do or not. But like, if orcs and humans can have kids, and if like elves and humans can have kids, I don't see why elves and tabaxi can't, right? Unless it's an anatomy thing. I don't know.
There are druids. We can solve this.
There are. I think I saw, for those who are folks of the C team, probably for those who aren't, our dear Rosie Beestinger on the C team, who plays an elderly grandmother monk, is very lascivious. So yes, kitty elves, why not? The last thing we were going to talk about today on Elf Check is Cupcake. You were talking about the very cool feats in Xanathars that are specific to race and how you were playing around with them.
Yes. So when Loxley, and I swear it feels like a birthday every time you level up, I was going through the feat and I noticed that I hadn't seen before this particular drow feat. It was a very difficult decision on whether or not I wanted to take it. And if you haven't caught these new race specific, I'll just read you the drow one in particular, since it was the one that I was like, hey, that's pretty cool. It's called Drow High Magic. So the prerequisite is obviously that you are a drow. You learn more spells typical for your people. You learn detect magic and can cast it at will without expanding a spell slot, which is awesome. So detect magic, all the things. You can learn Levitate and Dispel Magic, each of which you can cast once without expending a spell slot.
It's like a one-time cast per day, yeah.
Yeah, so you get Detect Magic as a cantrip always, and then you get a once-a-day Levitate and a once-a-day Dispel Magic cantrip.
Because Dispel Magic as a cantrip would be
super
broken.
powerful. It's a 3rd level spell, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The fact that you get this, just that you can one-off it. Like I know, Air, you were talking about the fact that your Violent gives you Dispel Magic, which, as a bit of a post, if you haven't seen it on D&D Beyond, I believe it was recently tweeted about, and you can find it if you want to use it. But like the fact that this spell just gives you one already without having to use a spell slot is cool. Like it's an incredible thing.
It's the kind of thing, Dispel Magic and Counterspell, they're kind of things where you want them, you want to have them in a lurch, but you don't really need them all that often. So having Jay give me a magical item that gives me a single use of such is super useful.
You also regain the ability to cast them after long rests, and Charisma is the spell casting for that, like most of the drow racial stuff.
So between like the starting kind of drow magic in this, you get like a nice collection of spells that you can use just without having to worry about spell slots or anything. What do you I think you have Darkness, and I know you've used some of your drow spells in game. I never remember.
Dancing Lights is a drow one, I think, as well.
And so is Darkness, yeah.
Fairy Fire.
Oh, cool. Those are awesome. Those are actually all super useful spells. Yeah, maybe I should play a drow. Things to think about.
It's all the stuff from the Drizzt books. It's very it all connects. I like the new stuff because it does tie in. They're the only D&D books that I've read, but I've read a lot of the Drizzt series. I would highly recommend them.
Haley, have you seen the High Elf?
I have. I have not read it.
It is cool. It is Fey teleportation. It increases your intelligence by 1 to a maximum of 20, and you learn Misty Step.
I actually did see that. I'm remembering now, but I have Misty Step.
Yeah, Eladrin have, I think, Misty Step as a racial too, to kind of get that Aophel flavor, because he could always. I think it had a different name in 4th edition, but it was the same kind of thing, a short range teleport.
It was Fey Step. It's basically Fey Step basically is the Misty Step spell. Fey Step is what it's called for the racial Eladrin ability.
Gotcha.
But it's basically that, like, transport yourself through the Feywild into another nearby space.
Spot, like 30 feet away, I think it is. Like, it's not too far, right?
Oh, it's like really short range. It's not far, like, at all.
That's cool, though.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I'm seeing 3 other ones for elves or half-elves.
Can I read the Wood Elf magic one? I got it right here.
Please.
All right, so I'm a Wood Elf, and so this I think is cool, and I'll say why. You learn the magic of primeval woods. You learn 1 druid cantrip of your choice. You can also learn Long Strider and Pass Without Trace, each of which you can cast once without expending a spell slot. You regain the ability to cast a spell in this way when you finish a long rest. Wisdom is your spellcasting ability. So as a druid myself, having access to another druid cantrip could be super useful. And I already have Pass Without Trace in my spell list. So being able to put that aside for another kind of spell, either damage or support, would be really cool. But if you're not a druid, having access to something like Thorn Whip or Druid Craft Or there's some really neat new ones. There's one called Infestation, which is like...
Yeah, the bug one.
Yeah, it's a really interesting... It can mess with like people who really need AOOs as attack, but basically you're just sending bugs in someone's face. And you do 1d6, which rises as you go, but then you roll a d4 to see that person is going to move 5 feet in any direction because they're just trying to get the bugs out of their face. So I think like having access to something like that would be like a really cool thing if you were taking a wood elf, but you were not a druid. And I think as character, like a story wise, like that's your people, right? So I think that that's just a really cool story bit that you could tack on.
I might round it off with being a half elf. This one is definitely one I would be looking at our next level up when we get an ASI. But the half elf one is called Everybody's Friend. You develop your magnetic personality to ease your way through the world. You gain the following benefits. Your charisma score increases by 1 up to a maximum of 20. You gain proficiency in deception or persuasion, and if you're already proficient in either skill, your proficiency bonus is doubled for any check you make with either of them.
What?
That's pretty fun. That's a very
so
Bertrand Beaststinger skill. Because he is just desperate to find people to love him. So I think that would be a perfect pick.
Like imagine if you're a rogue with this, and you already have those as skills.
I'm looking this
again.
up. My skill modifier for perception is a +6, and my deception is a +5.
And I think, I'm not sure if because I'm looking at the UA version right now. I'm not sure if they changed it, but normally anytime they do, this is essentially expertise in those skills. When you get double proficiency, like rogues get expertise, bards get expertise. But here it doesn't actually say, like normally it says if you already have expertise, you can't do it. But you could have expertise in these skills according to this and get it again.
That's one of
So you could have like a +20 in persuasion or something.
That's one of the UA ones.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm betting they've changed it because I would abuse that so much.
Oh, it'd be so dirty. You would just be like unreal. No one could believe.
bad.
Everyone would be your friend, exactly like you want.
So yeah, those are some there's awesome things in Xanathars. Every race got some really cool feat options. Definitely check them out when you pick up your copy of Xanathars at your friendly local game store or online or etc. We do not make any money from Wizards of the Coast yet.
Or ever. Thank you all so much for joining us for this episode of Insight Check. It was great having you, and great to be back. We would like to extend our usual greatest thank yous to Vinswept for our theme music, Never Stand Alone. Check them out on the YouTubes. They've got some great stuff. And also to the wonderful Amy T. Falcone for our cute faces and our lovely icon. And I think we had some extra special thank yous this week.
We would love to say thank you to the people who have left us 5-star reviews. Unfortunately, iTunes doesn't show us everyone unless you've left us some comments. So if I miss you here, I'll let you know that you do have our deepest thanks. But thank you to Jay McEwen, to Feebird, Raf DS112, Lucy567, and AJK1981.
We love you very much. This has been another episode of Insight Tech. Thank you again for joining us. And a special thank you to our friend Leap. If you would like to hear more exciting adventures of D&D with kids or see some fantastic raps, Leap, where can people find you?
You can find me at Twitter at LeapChessKey. It's all spelled exactly the way it sounds. And thank you so much for having me. This has just been a ton of fun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us.
It was
and
our pleasure.
Sharing the wisdoms, the treasure
Of wisdom.
Answering your cues from our collective A's.
This
Was
Insight.
Check!
Yay!
I didn't know what you said.
I said sorry.
No, before that. But anyway, we can take out this apology part of the podcast.
It's very Canadian, though.
It's so Canadian.
We should probably apologize a couple more times. Haley,
I'm
so
sorry for this. I'm really sorry that I was mean to Canada before.
I'm sorry I haven't apologized more up to this point, and I promise to do better. And I'm sorry if that promise seems disingenuous.
Oh, gosh.